Folks, this is Pat Moylan here from Teagasc, Kilkenny. So you're very welcome to our Teagasc Kilkenny Waterford webinar tonight on autumn grass management of 2024 and looking ahead to the winter fodder of the coming winter. So I suppose in response to the recent weather conditions in the area, particularly in Kilkenny and southeast area of the country, we have two guest speakers here, clients of mine in northwest Kilkenny, Michael Walsh, a dairy farmer in Orleyfarm, County Kilkenny. Tom McEvoy, a dairy farmer in Lisdowney, County Kilkenny. Aisling Claffey, our Teagasc nutritionist, and myself. And in the background, we have Caoimhe Duggan, who will handle the Q&A or the questions, and she'll explain how that can be done. And I'll thank in advance Mark Trimble, who is on the techniques. So you're very welcome to this seminar between 8 o'clock and 9, and hopefully you will get something from it. And at all times, there'll be opportunity to put questions into the Q&A box at the end. So I suppose setting the scene then, I suppose these are the current grass growth maps on pasture-based Ireland, which are updated every couple of days. And as you can see there, for the Kilkenny folk there, that's the growth for the last week, 33 kilos of grass dry matter per hectare. And you see our neighbours there in Waterford, 43, Tipperary, 38, Laois, 38, and Carlow, 35. So as you can see, they are well below grass growth rates of last year and have been low for the last couple of months. And I suppose what has happened as a consequence then, this graph here, just to go back to basic principles, looks at the targets that we'd like to achieve to maximise grass in the diet for cows, reduce cost, and have less slurry to spread on the fields. But the red graph there represents the target average farm covers from the autumn time way through till next spring till we hit this magic day in 10th to 15th of April. So where we would like to be, obviously, we'd like to be at this stage, the third week of September, we'd like to have grass growing grass on the farm and have an average farm cover of maybe around 1100. That means that your best paddock at the moment would be over 2000. And if you're not measuring grass, that would be roughly 3 fistfuls high, would be your best paddock. But as we'll see then, if we have that average farm cover and those targets mean that you will get through the lactation with minimal supplementation of forage, it'd be just maybe a grass and a couple of kilos of meal diet. But as we're seeing at the moment, that's where we would like to be. And I suppose this is where we are. So we're, as you see there, from pasture-based Ireland, recent information, 33% of farmers who are measuring grass have an average farm cover less than 700. And in my direct area, Northwest Kilkenny, I have some clients who are actually below 500 average farm cover at the moment. I know the rain of last night and today will help, but is it coming too little too late? 21% of farmers are in the middle band, average farm cover is 750. And we have 46% of farmers who are at 800 plus. So obviously we're here tonight to discuss the implications of what those growth rates and those average farm covers mean, and what are we going to do for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And also we'll be paying an eye with Aisling Claffey later on options for the winter ahead as regards winter fodder. So that's just setting the background, I suppose, to tonight's webinar. And I'd like to thank in advance to clients of mine, Michael Walsh from Woodgate. So I'll let Michael talk about himself in a moment. And also we have Tom McEvoy from Lisdowney. And I'm going to be, suppose, hopefully over the next few minutes, we're going to get their story on how they've managed grass, how they built cover or not, and what their plans are to the rest of the grazing year. So with that, I suppose we'll hand you over there and I'll introduce Michael Walsh. So good evening, Michael, and thanks for taking the time to join this call tonight.
Hey, Pat, no hassle.
So Michael, you just explain your farming situation briefly and cow numbers and current production just to get us started, I suppose.
So first of all, I'm a Laois farmer in Kilkenny, so we'll tidy that up first. Farming wise, sure, ran down to a very low farm cover there of 500 probably 5 weeks ago, and started taking action then straight away.
So you're milking many cows, Michael, just to give us the background there, I suppose, on the farm.
The background, milking 140 cows. Sure, all the spring calving system and huge emphasis on grass. Try to run it at a very simple, straightforward system.
So I see your farm cover is 908 as of the other day, which is above the average of what we've seen in the previous screen. So I suppose the obvious question to me and to listeners tonight is, how was that achieved, and what are the actions you've took?
Because it was once I recognised I was in the issue, I extended my rotation length up supplements, and I actually housed some empty cows to reduce the demand. So was reducing the demand was number one priority.
And obviously you measure grass on a regular basis. So when did you make that decision?
Sure, I walk the farm every 5 days. Coming in the middle of August, I had 4 walks in a row when my farm cover was falling. I got down to 503, I think, and it wasn't looking like it was going to take a turn for the better. I went in with silage at that stage. I was probably only feeding 0.8 of a kilo in the parlour.
Of
So
ration.
I upped the ration, yeah. I probably gave maybe a kilo and a half of silage, and went up to 2.5 kilos in the parlour. Sat there for probably 10 days. Wasn't making a huge positive influence for me. So I upped the parlour feeding up to maybe 4 kilos. Went in with 4 kilos of silage. There still wasn't enough change. Farm cover was only hovering around 600, 620. So then I made the decision to house 10% of the herd. Housed empty cows and milk them once a day, milk them in the morning. And they're probably getting about 5 kilos of a finisher nut as well.
So just the current diet of the cows there, the cows on the right hand side there. Oh, your Woods gift. Just you're feeding 4 kilos of concentrate, the pit silage. How are you feeding silage, or when do you feed it? Is it before milking, after milking, or how does it work out?
During milking, before I house the cows, I'm restricted on feed space on the collecting yard. There's probably about 50 cows can feed at any time there. So I used to hold in maybe the last 50, 60 cows after milking. And I used to give them a few hours on silage. And sure, it was working grand, it was very, very low labor and didn't cost a whole lot of time. But there wasn't enough of a rise in a farm cover. So anything I try to do, the likes of that, I'll always do it during the daytime. Once cows go into the parlour for the evening, they'll all go straight back out. I don't hold up any cow in the evening. Just for simplicity, and no one wants to be working late.
So you were feeding the herd, not necessarily each individual cow. So you're reducing demand on a herd basis by holding in the last 50 cows.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people, I suppose, often ask the question, what can I do if I don't have enough feed space? So there's one idea from Michael there tonight. And you explained there, I suppose, in this next slide here, just on the right hand side, you made a decision then to do what then?
I housed 10% of the herd, so it's only 14 cows. They're milking once a day. They're all empty cows. So look, they're going to leave the system anyway. Some of them, they're not doing huge yields. So I wasn't too upset housing them. They're on a finishing nut. They're being fattened. They're going to be fairly eligible for sale when the time does come. There's plenty of them milking well enough. They're paying their way. They're leaving money. So I suppose I have silage in the yard. So it didn't make sense to get rid of them right now. So.
And what you say their diet was again, just repeat it for us there, please.
For the cows in the shed.
Yes,
it's full silage. 2 kilos in the parlour in the morning, and then they're getting about 5 kilos of a finishing nut sometime in the evening.
And have you sold any of those cows yet, or when do you think they'll finish?
I actually sold 2 of them a couple of days ago. Sure, look, they were drying themselves off anyway. They were doing very low yields. So look, they were in good condition. I said I'd move them on.
So this has helped you further reduce stocking rate and reduce demand. That's the route you took?
Yeah, and sure, look, I'm also tighter on the tight side of slurry storage as well. So was the least, if I can give myself extra capacity going into the winter, I will.
Okay. And I was on the farm there with Michael a few days ago, and I just noted that you have a distinctive ear tag in the cull cows there. Just maybe tell us that story there.
Yeah, sure. As we're scanning, we're getting the results, and I put a tag with empty in the cow's ears for any cow not in calf, and then any cows that are carrying twins, they also get a tag, a green tag with twin on it. Sure, it's just it started at home. There was always three of us there, so it was all well and good if I knew the cows were empty or carrying twins, but was it shared the information with everyone, just simplified the thing. And look, it's just something I brought with me here, so
Okay.
you,
So
you know at a glance, like, you know.
exactly. And just the last thing I suppose on the photograph took my eye too there. I see you have C, H, and 4 there on bales, and you're storing the bales 2 bales high. So just explain to bale storage and why you label the bales.
Um, sure, the bales are all surplus, surplus coming off the grazing block. Uh, sure, there can be a big variation on the grass that's being cut at the time. So every bale it gets the paddock code. So they have CH4. It's written on every bale, and then I do record that on the notes on my phone. So just the cutting date, the yield, that was cut, and sure just what quality there was, and roughly how many bales. But you can go down through the stack there, and you can pick out what bales you want, if it's for young stock or for dry cows or whatever. Just takes the guesswork out of it.
Okay. And obviously, the better quality bales are fed to the milking cows, and the poorer quality maybe for dry cows. Would that be what you're hoping to
Yeah,
achieve?
yeah. Well, at least I know I can jump over a section of them and leave them for dry cows. Like, I don't have to be feeding very good silage there
Okay.
just because.
So I suppose, Mike, that's the second, as well as reducing stock rate on ground level, and up in the supplementary feed. You also took out, as you were saying there, you said 14 cows, 10% of the herd. Is that having a huge effect on demand and building grass cover, or did it have?
Oh yeah, instantly. You'd see it straight away. Sure, it's like anything. If you take pressure off the system, it'll return. It'll return straight away.
Okay.
Um, it's the simplest thing to do in my eye.
Okay. No, just look, very good. Just some simple ideas there, folks, to share with you there tonight. So I suppose going on then, I suppose the next question is here. I suppose I was helping Michael here to come up, and we put together a grass budget on Pasture Base Ireland, which is on Pasture Base, which you're all on. And obviously you can get help from a Teagasc advisor to help you with it. So what I did here, I suppose, I'm trying to give Michael some guidance on what he's going to do. So he is starting in a relatively good position at 908 average farm cover. So I took these growth rates rightly or wrongly. I'm hoping for a bit of kick in the growth rate next week there with today's rain. I suppose the other thing, Michael, you would say is that obviously the fact that you have a higher average farm cover at the moment, that obviously helps your growth rates going forward. Would that be a point to make as well, maybe?
It does, but I'm still not taking that for granted. I'm still going in with back fences. Every grazing is a 12-hour block now.
Yes.
Um, even if I'm traveling to the back of a paddock, I won't say I'll give them a spur road, but I'll fence off 90% of the field that they're only heading down one track, like.
Okay. So I suppose, look, as we spoke at the very start of the talk, folks, we spoke about that the importance, I suppose, of having an average farm cover, maybe around 700, 750, depending on stocking rate and 6-week calving rate at closing time. So closing cover is the average farm cover on the farm on the 1st of December. So when we put the budget together, what the budget, I suppose, is saying in summary, that if Michael continues to feed silage for the next 2 weeks, and these growth rates on the right occur, he will really get back to, grass and meal diet right the way through. And with some drying off then of maybe first calvers from the first week of November, which would be probably normal on the farm, Michael, I'm going to guesstimate,
Yeah.
and if the cows are kind of housed in around the 26th of November, so your farm is dry and is well out to cover, carry a grass cover. So the budget is indicating if those actions are followed and the growth rates on the right here occur, that you will get to a closing cover around 780 there on the 3rd of December, which is, I said the 1st of December is taken as the official kind of closing cover target date. I suppose the danger we would see out there is because farm cover at the moment is low, is there danger that some farmers will burn off the grass completely and have very little left and finish with a very low closing cover, which will have huge implications for next spring. So we'll touch on that. So that's just a budget. It's on Pasture Based Ireland, and your advisor can help you with it. So when I thought it up then, what feeding is involved for Michael for the next 6-8 weeks, from the 24th September up to the 26th of November, there's 8 weeks there, Michael, of good milk supply to come at good milk price, hopefully. So basically I worked out, came up with 40 ton of ration. We took a ration price locally and 100 ton silage fresh weight. So I just took silage there for the excise at €50 a ton. So you can see there that his supplementary feed costs to achieve that budget are €140 per cow. And I suppose we'll compare and contrast that with Tom McEvoy's in a few moments' time. So that's just a little tool on pasture base, which your advisor can help with, and very important to maybe have a go at it this year to see what are you going to do or what do you need to do to maintain farm cover at 700 to 750 at closing. So Michael, so from the fodder point of view, there's a quick table there, and I hope there won't be a row of trailers outside your gate in the morning, but you have plenty of silage on hands.
Yeah, that could change yet. If it starts raining and forgets to stop.
Absolutely. So look, we just went through a simple calculation of the feeds there, the cow numbers for the winter and the months. And then obviously just to keep it very simple, we have the calculator in the bottom there in feet. So I'm taking length by width by average height, and I'm dividing that by 47 cubic feet per ton. So as you can see, there is surplus silage on paper anyway. And as you know, I suppose it's important, I suppose, when we're doing a winter feed budget, not just think about the winter, but also think about the actual buffer feeding silage that's needed as well, which obviously a lot of that was used up in the last 6 to 8 months or in the last year, I should say. And obviously silage reserves were zero from the 1st of May of this year. So I suppose, Michael, in summary, I suppose, anything else you want to just say to our listeners tonight, the key messages that you would pick up from what you did this year and what advice you'd give to the listeners tonight?
Sure, slow down the rotation. That's probably the biggest thing. Slow down your rotation, reduce the stocking rate. If there's cows not paying the bills, they may get a career change if they're empty. Keep it simple, and I suppose no point in taking action in 2 weeks' time. It's tomorrow or the day after. It's the sooner you take action, the sooner you get results.
And also you took early action there in mid-August. I think you said to me when the average farm cover dipped to below 600, and that has paid dividends to date.
Yeah. Keep it simple, I suppose. That's all I was trying to do. And if it's simple, you'll do it.
Absolutely. Okay, Michael, we'll come back and there'll be questions there. So if you want to, in the bottom of your screens, there's the Q&A logo there, and you can tap into that there and type in your questions, and we will take questions when we finish talking to our next speaker. So I suppose, Tom, maybe just introduce yourself there. You're in, the important thing to say, you're in Lisdowney, even though you have a Ballyraggett address.
Yeah, Lisdowney, with no post office, I'm afraid. But we're milking roughly 170 cows. And last July, I do an average farm. I do a cover every week, roughly every 7 days. And I noticed then in early July, we're in a very dry area. We get very little rain throughout every summer. And early July, we kind of noticed that the growth rates are starting to drop. And we said we'd take action. We knew we wouldn't have enough of silage for the winter, and a lot of our bales, the quality wasn't good enough for feeding to cows. So we have a machine there to throw out feed to them, an IEP feeder, and we have enough of headspace for every animal to eat. meal. So we decided to buy soya hulls last July and started feeding them. We didn't want to start giving silage. Number one, a labour point of view, and number two, we didn't think that they wouldn't say milking good enough on silage because the quality wasn't good enough. I'd say it's the first year ever we never took bales off the milking platform. We never had the luxury of excess grass the whole summer. And basically then I didn't want to we used palm kernel in the past, and we ran into problems with it. We felt dietary problems that affected some of the cows. So we felt that the soy hulls was a better feed. And we used to feed them then every morning after milking. We'd hold up the cows when everything was milked. And we'd go around with the feeder. We'd have them fed in 2 minutes flat. And they'd have that ate up in. We used to give them 3 kilos outside, and we were giving them 4 nearly the whole summer in the parlour. So they were getting 7 kilos. So we were trying to match growth with demand all year, and we're still at that. And I'm afraid our growth rates have never been as low as they are there just a week gone by. And I just looked back 12 months ago, we had growth rates of 72 for the last week of September, and we're down at 30 this year. So amazing 2 years, no 2 years the same.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So Tommy, I suppose the comment I'd make, I suppose you're typical of what's out there, and your farm is, I suppose, that closing cover, which is what we're trying to fast forward. So, as you said yourself, your message, I think, tonight is that you're trying to match growth and demand for the next 8 weeks to close around 700. Like, what's your past experience of closing farms off?
We normally close higher than that, nearly somewhere around 8 to 900.
Okay.
We all
And
have a good way.
Why? Just explain why.
Because we go out early. We're out the end of January. The last week of January, we're always out with cows because we calve around the 20th of January, and we have a good bank of grass there in the spring. Unfortunately, the weather goes. We always get one bad month in the spring, but last spring, the whole spring was bad.
Okay.
January, February, the last couple of Februaries, bar last one gone, has been very good. To get cows out, and we'd always have a good build up of grass.
So that's your current wage as of the 23rd, 2 days ago, and it's your best paddocks there at 1,500. So how are you managing out in the field then? Is there a 12-hour wire up, or how do you manage that?
We're using a 12-hour wire, yes, every grazing, yes. Okay. And working pretty well, but only for the hulls. And they're milking very well at the moment. They're milking roughly 20 litres. Okay. And our fat and solids are up a little over 9%. So they're pretty good for the time of the year.
So there on the screen, there's a photograph of Tom's cows there. It was a strip where after being taken down, I'd say, and 4 kilos of standard ration, you're saying, 3 kilos of soy hulls, and yes, the rest of grass. Is that
grass and no silage? Because we hadn't the luxury to feed any silage this year because we're tight on feed, and if we couldn't start feeding them, or we wouldn't have anything to get us over the winter. So our plan is to stay feeding hulls. We bought them. They were good value there up until now. We were able to buy them for €200 up until of late. It's only now that they're talking of up in the price. So yes, for July and August, we felt they were good value, or better than feeding silage at €40 a bale or whatever.
So you said there, I suppose, that you had a preference for soy hulls. There are a lot of people who are feeding palm kernel and getting good results with it too. So I suppose it's down to personal choice, down to feed space and a few other things. Yes. So that's just looking at Tom's diet there, Tom. And I suppose, as you explained yourself there, just talked about this machine. So you have the luxury of enough feed space, or do you?
We have enough. They're all able to eat together. And we bought that machine 12 months ago. And it was probably the best investment we ever bought. And it holds approximately half a ton of feed. And we're able to give them roughly 3 kilos every day, every morning. And,
so explain how it works then. All the cows are let out to an empty feed tray.
Cubicles yet. They're not. We have electric wire on the cubicles. They don't lie down, and we have a shocking electric wire, and they all stand there until they're all milked. And as soon as everything is milked, then we'll come along with that and throw that in front of their heads, and then they all go out to the paddock together. And it's working very well, very good. Delighted with it. There's a little auger in the bottom of it, and just throws out the feed. Just it depends then what's your forward speed. And we have it fairly well calculated that we're giving them 3 kilos every morning. And we just feed it once a day. And there's little or no work with it compared to opening bales and plastic and all that sort of work. And we don't give it to them in the evening, only just at the moment once a day.
Okay, very good. Maybe there'll be questions again, folks. You want to put them into the Q&A there at the bottom of the screen. And I suppose look, I suppose similar to Michael there, I sat down there with Tom and we looked at a budget on pasture-based Ireland. And I suppose Tom's opening cover is lower. So for comparison, I took the same growth rates, which you can argue about up and down, but they're not over the top growth rates. And Tom said 72 this time last year. That was a remarkable time. I think the rain had just come after the plough match, if memory serves me right. So I suppose taking in mind what Tom's in there about not having at the moment maybe the luxury of feeding silage, and we look at his silage budget shortly. That's, you know, I just left the diet the same. Tom there, the 7 kilos is meal and soya holds together as he explained. So as you can see here, what's happening down along the line here with these expected growth rates here, and I suppose the other thing, I suppose this farm stock rate on the Michelin platform is a little higher than Michael's, which obviously is going to impinge on the demand side of the equation. So with the number of cows here, and as you see here, I just again made working. This is trial and error with the budget, but it does the figures very quickly for you. So what I told me here is that if we start off drying off here around the 11th of July, or 11th of July, sorry, November, and if we could reintroduce some silage, which probably will happen anyway because it's part of the winter budget, you can see that this farm can get down to an average farm cover here on the 2nd of December at around 750. So obviously there's a lot more meal going in this example, and a bit of silage here, because more likely the cows may be in by night for the last 2 weeks of November. So that's just a budget which I use there with Tom there just to get some guesstimate. And that's what it's about, I suppose, trying to get some guidance. The majority of phone calls coming in here at the moment are about what are we going to do over the next 6 to 8 weeks, and obviously then to look at how that might impinge on winter fodder supply as well. So this is a little tool on pasture base which your advisor can help you with. So on Tom's question, case then I did the same exercise as I did for Michael, and obviously there's a higher level of ration. So just for comparison, I put in all the ration at ration price. Obviously the soy hulls is retailing less than the dairy ration, Tom. And I put in silage, again, put a value on it at €50 a ton. So obviously you can see here, that's the potential, that's the cost, that would be the cost of feeding the animals over that period on the budget. And I suppose what you will remark there is that the feed cost per cow based on 168 cows will be obviously, it will be higher than Michael's at €215 per cow. So if you can remember back, Michael's figure there was €140 per cow. So I suppose in simple terms on this comparison for what it's worth, the lower grass cover and the higher stock rate marginally on the Michelin platform is costing Tom, I suppose, an extra €75 a cow, which is 7,500 on 100 cows, or 15,200. So look, I suppose just to bring it to your minds, I suppose that the low covers combined with high Michelin platform stock rate, if you want to maintain it and have a target close to cover of around 700 to 750 at the end of the year, your feed cost per cow are going to be substantial over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So that's something I suppose that people need to think about. So I suppose from a fodder point of view then, Tom, you can see the figures in front of you. Your cows, Waylands and in-calf heifers, and we look 4.5 months, 4 and 4.5. And just any comment you'd make yourself on the silage, what you see yourself in the yard?
Sure, I know we kind of know all along that we were tight with fodder, so we just have to mind it. We just keep it out of diet as long as we possibly can, because we know the quality of the bales aren't good enough. So we just have to keep going with the soy hulls for another while.
Okay. Well, obviously I had silage there in the budget, but obviously that's in mid-November, which will be part of that 4.5 feeding period anyway. So obviously, if the cows do come in by night to build up grass cover, something they'll have to get something, obviously. So we'll come back on that. So that's Tom's fodder budget, I suppose. And look, that's any closing comments, Tom? Any learning points you'd say out to the people tonight?
Well, I think grass measurement is vital. I think even once a week, because you really have you know when to take action if things are starting to slip. I think it's a must, definitely once a week. That'd be my main message.
And when did you take action, Tom? Go back. When did this
I took action in early July, because the rainfall was, we get 5 mils maybe this week, and we might get 10 mils in 2 weeks' time, and we knew the growth was starting to drop week after week, and our farm covers didn't go down as low as it went down to about 650 there in early August, and we had to start move. We said we'd move before we had to move, So you're able to make an informed decision early on until it's, before it's too late. And you're on top, you keep on top of it. We are always able to keep a decent amount of grass in the diet, even though we don't have much of it. And we think that's the secret. Is acting time again.
And grass management, just even to walk around, is vital.
Yeah, fierce important. And this year was exceptionally poor for growth, but at least you know what paddocks you're going into for the next 7 days anyway. Because if you're just driving along, you haven't an idea, looking in over the wire, you don't know what's in any paddock.
Very good.
Sure, you do a grass cover there in an hour. It doesn't take any longer, less than an hour.
So it's good for the mind and good for the body as well.
Good for everything, yeah.
Very good. So look, at this stage, before we go on to our next speaker, Aisling, maybe is there any questions there, Caoimhe, for the two farmers?
Yeah, so just one that came in there for Michael was, what was your stocking rate before you pulled out the empty cows, and what is it now?
Before I pulled out the empty cows, I brought in a bit of silage ground. I brought in new reseed. I would have been 3.3 for the whole year. Well, all ground included, I would have been 3.3. I would have spent a lot of the year at 3.8. Right now, I am 2.5 with the cows gone out. When I had the cows in, I think I was 2.8 or close to 2.9.
That's on the milking platform you're talking about now, yes.
Platform, yeah.
Okay.
There, yeah. How are those cull cows, how are they performing on the once a day? Have you seen any bother with mastitis or anything that they're inside or anything like that?
No. I had them on once a day. I scanned on the 13th of August and I put them on once a day. I put all empty cows on once a day, probably about the 20th of August. Regardless of the grass situation, sure, look, they're going to be making a move off the farm, so I want them going off in good condition. Look, they're still, what milk they're going to lose is minimal from being milked once a day. If they're losing it in milk, they're going to put it on their backs, so they're going to pay me one way or the other.
Just a few for then as well.
Cell count is probably at the minute, it's bouncing between about 55 and 82.
Very good. Happy with that. So
yeah.
Few then for Tom as well. Just had you any kind of scope or anything, Tom, to lower the stocking rate on the milking platform for autumn? Was there any options there?
No, we have a problem here with TB, and we had to keep we have a problem on an out farm, so we had to keep our calves on the milking block as well. So that tightened us up slightly this year. So we couldn't reduce any more.
Yeah, no bother. And then, have you any observations from the soy hulls? You said you were happy with them, but are cows milking well on them? Fat and protein good?
They're milking pretty well all since we introduced them. The milk yield has held up all for the last 3 months. It hasn't dropped at all. Very little. I find them actually a very good feed. Very good. Delighted with them now, yeah.
And just finally, the last one then, just looking at the fodder budget. If you are going to be tight for silage over the winter feeding period, what options are you keeping in mind? Buying silage wise or anything like that?
When cows are dry, we have a good bit of straw we can feed to the cows, to dry cows, to just slow down the amount of silage. We done that there 2 years ago as well, and worked reasonably well. Just roll out the bale in front of them, make sure it's in out of the weather. That's number one. Keep the straw dry.
Yeah, very good. Just a few in there as well for Pat. I know Aisling is going to cover this as well, but just about the options of feeding palm kernel. What are the benefits of it, I suppose, and what options are there for our farmers? I know Aisling is going to cover it in the next few slides.
No, I'll leave that to Aisling. Obviously, palm kernel is being used instead of soy hulls, and to me, I suppose my clients who are using it are getting on very well with it. as we show, they are feeding them maybe water troughs either in the paddock or in the collection yard. And it's a self-limiting feed in that if you don't have enough feed space, it may be the product of choice, because the cows will come to it, eat what they want and move away. And I know that a lot of farm kernel is being fed throughout the county of Kilkenny, I'm sure into Waterford. So look, it's down to personal choice, feed space, labour availability. So look, they are, at the end of the day, they are fill options to meet a deficit and try and suppose to reduce the costs of it. They're high in digestive fibre. So Aisling will talk about that in more detail in the very near future.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly. And there's another one in there as well about the value of silage, but Aisling can cover that one as well. We'll get to that.
Okay. So look, we're not finished with Tom and Michael. They can take a little sus there now, and I'm going to hand you over to Aisling Claffey, our newly appointed Teagasc nutritionist, and over to you, Aisling, and we'll take questions again at the end of the session.
Thanks very much, Pat. So good evening, folks. Yeah, I'm going to go through a few feed options for the current scenario on farm, and maybe looking forward into the winter as well. I suppose to start, I'm going to take two scenarios. Looking at maybe a growth rate of around 40 kilos, which is maybe just slightly above the average growth currently in Kilkenny. And in terms of different stocking rates on farm, what that actually reflects in terms of a grass allocation and the amount of supplement that be required just to maintain your current farm cover. So you can see as stocking rate increases from 2.5 cows to 3.5 cows, your grass allowance within that to match your growth and demand is going to decrease accordingly. So at a lower stocking rate, you can afford to allocate more grass, 2.5 kilos there, and growth of 40, you can allocate 16 kilos of grass. As your growth declines or your stocking rate increases, either or, it's going to reduce your grass availability. So at 3.5 stocking rate on the milking platform, that's allocation dropping down to 11. And that's going to affect the amount of supplement required, and I suppose the options you have then to feed cows. I suppose we have to be conscious that growth, we might get a small kick from the rain over the next week to 10 days, but growth is probably going to decline steadily then over the next month. You're coming into October, shorter days, colder temperatures as well. So to be conscious of that. And then I suppose
just to make a simple comment there, I suppose if people want to maintain average farm cover, is it as simple as I'm reading here that you divide the growth rate by the stocking rate, and that tells you how much grass you can give going forward?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if you're growing 40 this week and you're stocked at your 2.5, that'll give you an allowance of 16. Very simple, straightforward maths to do, and then you have to maintain that allocation to just hold your cover. So if you're in a scenario, then I'm going to discuss it as the next option, where growth is dropped to a more severe case at 20 kilos, and I suppose we have growth rates as low as 10 and 15 within the pasture-based data from the southeast in the last week to 10 days. So we're looking at the option of a growth 20 kilos at the exact same stocking rates. That's going to severely impact your grass allocation on farm. So the stocking rate of 3 there, you're looking at a grass allocation of just shy of 7 kilos. So really you're only going to get one proper feeding at grass instead of 2 grazings. So you're at a much higher level of supplement required, and then that's going to dictate your supplement options. So I'm going to go through a few of those scenarios now. So in terms of scenario 1, you're really looking at a supplement level between 4 and 8 kilos. At the lower level of that, a lot of that can be managed through in-parlour feeding. Like in Michael's case, he's at 4 kilos. It's very simple and convenient, but it is the most probably costly supplement option there at about 35 to 37 cents per kilo of dry matter. So I suppose as you're going above that 4 kilos, we have to consider other options. Buffer feeding of silage is an option, going in there above the 4 kilo supplement, that you could go in with 3 or 4 kilos of good quality silage. So ideally milking cow silage needs to be between that 72 and 74 DMD. And I suppose the biggest challenge for farmers at the moment is having enough of that good quality silage in the yard. And I suppose being conscious that we keep a reserve there for next spring as well. We've seen what happened in late March and April this year when grass got tight on the farm and there wasn't good quality reserve of silage in the yard. It really impacted on performance on farm. So we have to keep that buffer there for the following spring. Where silage isn't an option, like Tom touched in his own case, we're looking at fibrous meals if we have to increase that supplement to that kind of higher end there. So these will be slower to digest in the rumen, so they'll minimize any digestive upsets at that higher feeding rate. So you can look at soya hulls as an option, bee pulp is another good feed, and palm kernel. So they're lower costs than your concentrate through the parlour, but I suppose there's labour involved, and feed space on farm will also dictate what opportunities you can avail of over the coming weeks. I suppose the key thing here is that if you're going in with supplementary feeds, the strip wire needs to be in place to allocate grass accordingly. If you're not tightening up that allocation out in the paddock, you're going to have a substitution effect. So your concentrate isn't going to replace like for like in terms of forage. It'll only displace 1 kilo concentrate, might only displace half a kilo of grass if you don't put up the wire. So you're going to rob yourself both ways. So it's be conscious of your allocations as well. I suppose there was a mention in terms of just look at the different options for the feeding out. So palm kernel can be left ad lib available to the cows. So it can be something like that, an empty water trough filled up in the yard that they can access around milking time. Or this could be something that can be moved around the farm as well, that if you're tightening up their grass allocation by day, maybe only giving them 4 kilos of grass in the morning so that you can give more grass at night, that you can bring that trot around the paddocks and keep it there with the cows. So they'll self-regulate with palm kernel, so that's a convenient option when feed space is limited on farm. We have that photo of Tom feeding out the soya hulls again as an option if feed space is there, that you can feed the likes of your soya hull or bee pulp nuts in the shed as an option as well. And we have a photo from another client of Pat's who is mixing brewer's grain through the silage to try balance out the protein levels in the silage as well. So I suppose the main driver of choosing a supplement option is labour and feed space and what suits on farm, but also the costs involved. So the relative feeds value table is an interactive tool available on the Teagasc website. So all you need to utilise that tool are the price of 2 inputs, which are barley and soya. And by incorporating that, it assigns a value to the energy and protein within all the feeds and gives you the relative value of that compared to barley and soya. So we have completed this for a range of ingredients here, comparing them to barley at $2.50 a tonne on an as-fed basis and soya at $4.50 a tonne on an as-fed basis. And I suppose if we look at the fibrous feeds in particular to start, bee pulp is worth $2.60 a tonne, soya hulls is worth $2.45, and palm kernel is worth $2.85. And I suppose even though palm kernel has a lower UFL value, which you'll see there, it has a higher protein level, which is actually driving up the relative value of it. And I suppose if we look at typical costs of these feeds at the moment, bee pulp is very much like for like basis. It's worth about $2.60 and probably costing that for the most part. Soya hulls is the relative feed value is $2.45, but it should be got in most places for around $2.15. Tom mentioned it might be increasing now, I suppose, as demand for these products might increase to hold grass over the next few weeks. And then palm kernel is valued at $2.85 and probably got around the $2.30 to $2.40 mark. So I suppose there's the most value to be got in hulls and palm kernel versus bee pulp as an option. In terms of our forage sources, then silage at 76 DMD, it's worth €45 a tonne. So if you bring that back to purchasing a bale of silage, that'll be the equivalent of €36. And 68 DMD silage is worth €38 a tonne. That's equivalent to paying €30 a bale for 68 DMD silage. And realistically, when you go to the market to buy silage, 68 DMD is probably more than likely what you're going to be able to source, and it's very hard to control what you're buying. And I suppose the reality is what we're actually paying on out there is probably closer to that €40 to €45 bale. So it's costing that 68 DMD silage is probably costing closer to €55 a tonne as fed. Maize silage then as an option, particularly where you're limited in terms of milk and cow quality silage, is a better option than that moderate 68 DMD silage. So you're probably looking at it being worth about €63 a tonne, probably going to cost you closer to €70 to €75 a tonne as fed. But that's an option there where that higher quality silage isn't available to you and you're trying to maybe maintain a reserve in the yard for next spring. And then I suppose straw as an option, very low nutritive value. So the relative ton price on per ton basis is €105. And if you take that back to on an as-fed basis at a €35 bale, it's actually costing €2.30. So really straw is a non-runner from a cost point of view, albeit it might be a good option during the dry cow period to stretch silage.
And
So
actually,
then
just a question there, sorry, that the UFL net energy, that's per kilo dry matter. So
please.
beet barley is taken at 1 UFL per kilo fresh weight.
Yes.
But now for the dry matter, that they're in dry matter terms. It's just I see a question there on the Q&A, but very good question for clarification.
Yeah, all on a dry matter basis, yeah. So then I suppose we look at scenario 2 then in terms of those higher feeding rates where average farm cover has significantly dropped or growth is significantly reduced on farm, and we're looking at maybe supplementing over that 8 kilo mark, so 8 to 12 kilos of supplement required. And I suppose at this stage you really need to be assessing your overall winter feed budget and ensuring that you have enough forage in the yard, and potentially exhausting all options in terms of looking at stocking rate and lowering your demand on farm. If there's passengers there, they really need to be considered for leaving the farm or coming off the grazing platform, as Michael has done. I suppose the supplementary forage options may be dictated then by the longer term picture. If you've plenty of good quality silage in the yard, that's 72 to 74 DMD grass silage, it's a perfect supplement for now, but we need to be conscious that we maintain that reserve of 300 kilos of dry matter for next spring. So that's about a bale and a half of silage per cow. So on a 100 cow basis, we need a reserve of 150 bales. If you're carrying a higher stocking rate on the milking platform, so going over that 2.8, you probably need to have a slightly higher reserve than that. So between 150 and 200 bales of a reserve for next spring. Where grass available on out farms, zero grazing, that might be an option to reduce your current demand. And as I mentioned, maize silage, if good quality grass silage isn't available, it might be an option to offer more energy in a forage basis in the short term than purchasing moderate quality silage, which is really only suitable for maintaining condition in dry cows.
Just a question come in there. I just taken live there. What we're talking about adequate feed space per cow. So what is adequate feed space per cow for the malt eat at the one time?
Yeah, you're really looking at about 8 cows per bay. So assessing the yard structure there and determining have you enough feed space that all cows can access it. Yeah. So
we still talk about, I think, 2 foot per cow or 60 centimeters per cow.
Yeah.
So at the feed space they can all line up together as in. Yeah. So in Tom's case, that's what you have there, Tom. I think you have 2 foot per cow.
We have, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, so look, I suppose when we're offering silage, most people are trying to avoid using the shed. I suppose if you're in the scenario where you're using a small buffer silage of 2 or 3 kilos, you can probably offer that around milking time and offer a smaller grass allocation by day and night to keep cows out. Another option is buffer feeding outside in terms of a sacrificed paddock, or in this case, the client was using a diet feeder to feed silage against the wire. So he's minimising harm done to the paddock in that case, but it was keeping cows out of the shed as a result. And another option in terms of reducing your demand is zero graze grass as well. So that's an option to consider if you have grass available on an out farm. But I suppose for a high proportion of farms are, as Pat mentioned, in some cases below an average farm cover of 500. A good third of farms are below 700 kilos of dry matter on an average farm cover basis. I suppose we'll all know the phrase it takes grass to grow grass, but what does that actually mean in reality? And I suppose where farm cover or pre-grazing yield drops below 1,200 kilos dry matter, you're potentially suppressing your growth further. So I suppose for the farms that have reduced growth rates below 30 kilos, is that a result of dropping your average farm cover and your lower pre-grazing yields is further impacting growth, versus in Michael's case where he has consciously slowed down his rotation and got growth rates up there on the 50 mark in recent days. So in terms of the plant, when it's grazed, it requires a reserve of what we call water-soluble carbohydrates in the root structure to support that burst of growth over the next week. So restoring that first leaf. And then once we get a leaf up there, it's able to start capturing sunlight and photosynthesizing and pulling energy in. And then that second leaf allows a more rapid growth rate because you have more surface area to capture light and continue that growth. And really we need that plant to be getting to that stage between 2 and 3 leaves, which is really 12 to 1500 of a cover to really optimize growth on farm. So if you're constantly grazing paddocks over the next week to fortnight below between that 1000 to 1200, you're potentially further suppressing your growth rate. So I suppose in those scenarios, probably have to go in and intensively supplement for maybe a week or two to try get back over that, get out of that rut and get pre-grazing covers back to between 12 and 1500, and then try maintain our average farm cover around that 750 mark throughout October and into November over the next few weeks, because otherwise you're going to get into a vicious cycle there. And I suppose we can't close our eyes, even though the current situation needs tackling. You have to consider the longer term forage situation on your own farm. So we need to ensure that there's sufficient forage in the yard for the winter months, and also concentrate on maintaining a reserve of milk and cow silage of that 74 DMD plus for buffer next spring, and sufficient dry cow silage. And I suppose if you're going out to source silage, that 66 to 68 DMD silage that you'll likely purchase, it's fit to maintain cows in optimum body condition score. So that's something to be mindful as well, that cows are in fish condition to be maintained at that level. If you're buying poor silage, you need to consider maybe feeding a bit of meal on top of that as well to drive up body condition score if it's not on target. And I suppose there's a significant cost to meeting the energy demands of the early lactation cow next spring if grass and high quality forage isn't available. So we need to be conscious that the decisions we're making aren't going to impede our early lactation cow, because she's a much more vulnerable animal than that late lactation animal. So take the steps now to ensure that your average farm cover will be on target at closing, and that you have sufficient good quality silage in the yard for that milking cow next spring to buffer feeder through that spring period at grass.
So thanks, Aisling, very much. I suppose a lot of timely reminders there, and we'll take questions in a moment here. So I suppose from listening to the conversation for the last maybe 55 minutes or so, I suppose summarize it for me, I suppose for most of people out there tonight, and I see a few questions there in the Q&A. For most farmers out there, it's about maintaining farm cover over the next 6 to 8 weeks is the target. And how do you do that? You match demand with growth. As Aisling explained in the example, if you divide the growth rate by your stock rate, that will tell you how much grass you can allocate to the cows, and the rest has to come from supplement. So that'll be obviously dictated by growth rate, but more importantly by stocking rate. And we've heard already tonight, I suppose, what Michael did to reduce demand by looking at the stocking rate. So everything is on the table, Aisling, I suppose, in that regard. I suppose number two, unfortunately, supplementary feeding will continue on farms to drying off. The quantity will depend on the grass cover and the stocking rate. I suppose, again, the question is asked, can it be reduced? And we showed you the two examples again tonight between Michael and Tom there, and there was a difference there of €75 in extra feed costs with the lower cover and higher stock rate in the two examples we took tonight, just as an example. Look, there's a lot of milk left in cows yet, and milk is very valuable, so there's a lot of revenue to be gathered in the next 8 weeks. Number three, I suppose, as you're hearing tonight from the farmers, I suppose the importance of doing a grass and fodder budget should be completed now. So if you need help, contact your local advisor, your local Teagasc advisor across the counties or the country there. But it does give you some steer. I suppose, Tom, you're very strong that at least if you measure, you can manage, but if you don't measure, you can't manage. Would that be fair comment, Tom?
Yeah, that'd be fair enough, Pat. Yeah.
So you mightn't believe me, but you believe Tom there. Okay, I suppose, look, the important point number 4 there, we have to think ahead that the next year's opening grass covers will be dictated by what you do on farm the next 6 to 8 weeks and what you close at. So as we mentioned there, the closing cover of 650 to 750, the range will depend on if you're lower stocked, and if you have a lower 6 week calm rate, you'll be on the lower scale of that, maybe even lower than 650. But as Tom said there, I think, Tom, you will be planning there for 800, I think, from memory,
Yes, that's right.
because of the high stocking rate and a high, I should say, 6-week calving rate and early turn out to grass. So I just took the figure for both farms tonight at 750, which is for most farmers is equal to what they are at this moment in time. Yeah, the danger of losing a low closing grass cover, huge implications and costs for next spring. And obviously the freshly calved cow is a very important animal and has to be fed as well as possible. And there's just a little figure we heard there from a recent talk there in Moore Park, that every 100 kilos of dry matter per hectare less on the closing cover does reduce the days of grass next spring by 6 to 8 less days of grass in spring. So that's maybe a simple message from tonight, that every 100 kilos less in your closing cover will reduce your days of grass next spring at a time when you need it most. And I suppose, look, Aisling, I suppose you would say do a winter fodder budget now and look at the options if deficit in time. I don't make any comment on that there.
Yeah, I suppose tying that in with your grass budget over the next 6 weeks as well, if you're eating into that winter reserve, that you're taking options to replenish that, and particularly if you're utilising a lot of your milk and cow silage, that you maybe source dry cow silage or an alternative forage in the meantime to stretch out for that winter period.
Okay. So look, we're nearly at the end, folks. Bang on time here. So back to Cueva Duggan there. Some closing questions that can still be added in the Q&A there.
Yeah, just a few questions there. So there's one farmer here, Aisling, from a dry farm. He says average farm cover is less than 400 at the moment and a stocking rate of 3.5. What are his options?
I think at that stage I'd strongly consider looking at maybe removing cull cows from the farm. I know it mightn't be the most cost-effective option, but you're looking at maybe replacing or having to require a lot of supplement over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So they might pay for some of that supplement, even though they might have milk to give. So it might just alleviate some of that pressure. I suppose a cover of 400, pre-grazing yields are probably at 800 or 900. You really probably need to take drastic action for 2 weeks to try get that back on track. So I suppose we looked at matching stocking rate or demand and growth. But if you could reduce your demand to about 10 kilos below your growth rates over the course of about 10 days, you'd increase your average farm cover by another 100. So if you could take maybe more drastic options in the short terms in terms of the level of supplement feeding and going with a high level of silage, it might get you back up to that 700 a lot quicker. And maybe in the longer term, it might alleviate the pressure more considerably. So it's a more drastic scenario. So it probably takes more drastic actions to get back on track.
Absolutely. Another one there then, just with lower covers out there now, what should the rotation links be at the moment? This farmer that put this in is currently at 34 days.
Yeah, so I suppose we're only 10 days away from our final rotation realistically, and that's generally geared at a 40-day round. So you're really sitting between that 35 to 40 days. I suppose at lower covers, you probably want to be heading for the 40 days to try actually get that back on track and try get back to a more optimum pre-grazing yield of 12 to 1500 to try minimizing or to try improve your growth rates as well over the coming weeks. I suppose if you continue on that trajectory of low growth rates, it's going to significantly impact your ability to actually grow grass right through the winter.
Another one there just in the chat, but will cows eat the palm kernel or the soy hulls if they get wet?
Maybe Tom might make a comment there if you want to.
That should be an issue, to be honest.
There was never a problem up until now anyway. You'd see there'd be a small bit sometimes in the like after today now that the hulls might be wet. Most of them are under cover anyway, but there's one side of the shed that's open, but there's never a problem that eat them wet or dry. Never a problem. Just sweep them in when if they're out of reach. That's all. Just jump them in that they can get them. They'll eat them. But preferably keep them dry if you could at all.
Okay. That's all the questions that are there, unless anyone has anything they want to run into the chat fairly quickly, then that's all that's there to be asked.
So look, before we say goodnight, we'll give the final word maybe to Michael Welsh. You want to give maybe one more line, Michael, a take-home message from Michael and then from Tom?
There are a couple of things. It's probably for any farmer who's in the scenario, you know, short of feed or short of grass, it's been uncomfortable to get into that scenario. It's going to be very uncomfortable to get out of it. Going to take drastic action. Then your number 2, prevent it happening again. Measure grass regularly. Know your figures. Know them inside out. Keep fertilizer out. I would say keep K out in your fertilizers as well. Seems to maybe you'll give an opinion, Pat. Seems to be good to keep things going in drier times. Control what you can, reduce your stocking rate, control your rotation length, and milk record. Gather your information, scan your cows and milk record your cows. Know what you're dealing with. That's
very good. And Tom, any words of wisdom there just before we wrap up?
I think Aisling nailed it there when she said, I think we nearly, anyways, with low covers, we'd nearly want to introduce silage for a week or 10 days and give the grass a chance to come back, especially now that we got a drop of rain, even though I know the weather is to be cold for the next few nights. But I think the weekend is to pick up again. So now that there is a bit of moisture, maybe not near enough, but it's a start. We have a chance to kickstart grass growing again. I know the growth rates are going to reduce naturally. We're into October next week, but we have to have a go anyway and see. Just introduce, even if we could just introduce a bit of silage for a week or 10 days, to build up the grass. At least we'll have something there later on. I think that's as good a message I've got there now.
Very good, Tom. Very good. So, any final questions, Quiva?
Nope, nothing else came in there, Pat. All good.
So, folks, just on your behalf and our behalf here in Teagasc, Kilkenny, Waterford area, thanks to Michael Walsh there and Tom McEvoy, for 2 farmers there, for giving their experiences, and to the Teagasc nutritionist there, Aisling Claffey, for her information. And look, we appreciate it's been a difficult last 12 months. Grass growth is back 1 to 1.5 tons of dry matter per hectare. There are still, you know, things we can do, and the lads have spoken about them there tonight, the little tips that they've given you, hopefully. And obviously, you know, we're at the end of the phone here, your Teagasc advisor, for individual advice or help with any of those budgets we mentioned. So before we wrap up, just to thank Mark Trimble there on the technology there at the end. If you or your neighbours have missed this webinar tonight, it has been recorded, and you will get a link shortly from Teagasc in the next couple of days, so you can look at it in your leisure. And look, thanks also to my own colleague here, Quiva Duggan, for handling the questions and answers. So hopefully we'll give you the answers. So thanks one and all, and good night. We'll leave it at that. Thank you.